Okay, I think we'll start. Other people may be joining as we go along, which is great. And this session is being recorded, so those people who have not been able to attend this morning, or today, I should say, won't miss out. They'll get the content that we're going to be sharing with you. So I do want to, first of all, welcome dear Servas members globally here. It's a delight when we can connect so easily across the world this way. Um, and welcome to this session. It's entitled Women in the Shadow of Poverty and Conflict. Um, Today, October 17th, is the United Nations International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. So we thought we would offer this event to Servas members today to mark this important day on the United Nations calendar. My name is Kent Macaulay. I'm a Servas Canada member. I live on a small island on Canada's west coast, and I'm also Servas International's main representative to the UN in New York. Um, I Just a couple of quick things. Just to reduce the background noise, I'll ask everybody who is not speaking to keep their microphone on mute, just so we don't get any noise interference. Thank you. Um, and hopefully we'll be able to keep as many videos on as possible, but I know that can be difficult for bandwidth in some countries. So we may need at some point to ask you to turn your video off as well. Uh, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, as you know, Servas was formed after World War II in order to promote peace. And the main way to do that was the idea that Servas travelers would stay with Servas hosts in different countries, different cultures, and get to know them better. But some of you may not know very clearly that Servas has also had a connection to the United Nations for the past 50 years, 50 years. Uh, and In particular, we have something called consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. That This allows Servas to name representatives to three of the locations where the United Nations has offices: Geneva, Vienna, and New York, to carry forward the voice of Servas members and inject them into certain meetings and conferences of the United Nations and its 193 countries that make up the UN. Uh, this year, the Servas's representatives to the UN have something of a special focus on the theme of women and poverty, especially in situations of armed conflict. Just since July, we've had opportunities to have input into in three different UN events that we'll talk about a bit after the presentations by the other two speakers this morning. Uh, but the idea is to get our Servas message across. And so today, again, our theme is Women in the Shadow of Poverty and Conflict. It's for Servas members. Our two speakers today are Servas members themselves. They are Servas International representatives to the United Nations in Geneva. So one of them is Helga Merkelbach, and the other is Daniela Doenges. And together they'll be speaking for 30 minutes or so, after which we'll have 30 minutes or more for discussion, questions, that sort of thing as a group. Um, I'm by way of introduction, Helga will go first. She is a world traveler, mainly through her travel with Servas. She's going to offer her perspectives on women and poverty and armed conflict through her eyes of having traveled to many countries, observing how people are living and talking to a lot of people along the way. So I'll turn that over to Helga, and she'll carry us through for the next short while.
Good evening, and thank you for this chance to speak about this topic and also to speak about what we as Servas International can do at the UN and in general. And I will talk about journeys that I made when I was traveling, and I will start with the topic of poverty, men and women. Well, this is a picture that most of you, I suppose, come across in your own countries. I discovered it when I was traveling in Costa Rica. This is the home of a homeless, and it's a man. And very often you find a group of men, unemployed, hanging around, drugs, alcohol, and we feel afraid of them. This is in Brazil, in Campinas. And sometimes they try to make a living, as this man in Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil, tries to make a living on collecting bottles and tins. Well, and as you can see, it is raining here, and this man has managed to establish a kind of business, small business. And while I was in Brazil earlier this year, it was raining so heavily most of the time. That was climate change. And that is what we can learn, that the marginalized are hit the first and the strongest. And you can see in the next picture what happened to the livelihood of this man. It was destroyed by the rains of the climate change. And I don't know how his family will survive further. Well, this is men. Men is what you usually see in the public. Sometimes you also find this picture, it's also in Rio de Janeiro, a woman searching the garbage for something to eat, something useful. Usually women find other ways of survival. They usually get support in the families, and very often they sell themselves to get some money. So this is poverty in general, but poverty connected with conflict. I could see in Kharkiv, where I was staying with a Servas host, and she showed me her city. This is before Putin attacked Ukraine. It is the time after 2014, when the war had actually already started. And this is inside Kharkiv, it's in the center, where the army is trying to attract young men to join the army to fight in Donbass. And it is made attractive by, well, these soldiers are not shooting, they are not committing any violence. Look, they are caring for even animals, as you can see at the bottom picture. What it means for the women, if the men go fighting, actually many did not go. They left the eastern part of Ukraine and went western. They tried to hide. That was still possible before Putin invaded. Now, what happens to the women is they are left with all the jobs. Maybe before they had household and children, but now they have to keep the family alive. And I saw this woman in a small place in Izium in eastern Ukraine, who is doing the job that most likely her husband would have done before. And also they try to survive by growing something in their gardens, or if they have on the fields, and they try to make more money by selling what is left over, what they do not eat. So that is a situation that during conflict, women take all the roles, keeping family life, keeping life up. Even before 2022, there were already 1.5 million IDPs. That means internally displaced people in Ukraine. And I came to this container, which had been funded by Germany, by the German government. And the women there, it was women with children who had already been living there for 5 years. These containers are cold in winter, hot in summer, and their children were mostly children with handicaps. And they told me that Germany delivers rice and other food, but they don't get it. The government has to distribute it. They keep it, they sell it, and they give less quality food than to the IDPs. So women who had to leave the country or the part of the country, they are not well cared for. So what some do, I visited a family where one IDP was staying with family, and they were producing these little dolls and selling them to people to support themselves. And they would also cross the borderline, well, that is where the shooting happens, to go back and to harvest from their gardens. So they would have food as IDPs in Ukraine proper at that time. And you can imagine that it has gotten worse these days. And I found women on the street, mostly old women, who, well, showed they were poor. And I do not know if they were poor from the conflict or if they were poor anyway as older people. And I feel ashamed of taking such a photo from the distance, show you, but I think it is good to have a look at it and be aware that that is reality of women in conflict. Well, I don't want to leave you alone with this picture of poverty in conflict. I want to look at some solutions. And the first solution that I saw was when I visited Morocco last year. I stayed with the Servas host and he cooked a wonderful meal for me. And then he said, I want to take you out to meet an old woman. And this is Fatma, who he visited. And Fatma had made bread for us. And she served us olive oil, all from her own fields. And in the outside in the yard, I saw her harvest. She lives with her son, who is around 45 and is handicapped. So she has nobody left to take care of her. Now, this is not a situation of conflict unless we see that Morocco is keeping the West Sahara under control. So there is army, there is fighting, and there is money that is spent on the military. But this woman has a choice of selling this land, which is her land. And if she sells it, as you can see in the background, there are modern buildings. It's near Casablanca. So what might happen to her land if she sold it? She would get a fair sum of money so that people who buy it could build a holiday home and stay there for the weekends like this one, or it would be used for agribusiness. But agribusiness is depriving more and more Moroccan farmers of their land and of their chance to support themselves, self-sufficiency in food. Now, what I need to say is Ahmed, my Servas host, he does what many Muslims do. He follows the 5 pillars of Islam. He gives zakat. That means he kind of secretly gave some money to this woman. He visits her. He does not leave her alone. So this is one idea of how you can support women in poverty. The second example, and I'm glad that Fidel is here himself, the second example is Rwanda. Rwanda in 1994 had the genocide, and it was mostly men that were killed, and who was left was a majority of women. And that today is represented in a sample that is unique in the world. And that is why Rwanda sometimes is called Women Wonderland. The majority of parliamentarians and in the government of Rwanda are women. It's more than 60% in the parliament. Nevertheless, when you come to the countryside, you see women still do the same jobs, taking care of water, food, family, children. But with this government, there seems to have been a change. They have built houses and people move there from different regions, or kind of they are even forced to go and live in these houses because houses were destroyed during the genocide. And here, people do not know if they are perpetrators or if they are victims when they live together. They just try to build the present and the future. And also I saw that in many places, water now is a source inside the village. The same, these are the toilets they had before, and now there are toilets built in the village. So there is something done for, well, eliminating poverty or giving a better chance to people. And the best that I saw was Ramrek, which was founded by Fidel, by our Servas member. He tries to handle the violence that is still there. He basically says that violence does not just disappear when genocide is over, when the war is over. You have to do something about it because women are mostly hit by the violence that is still inside of the men who did the fighting or who were victims. So he has a program that's called the Rwanda Men's Resource Center to, well, to abolish violence in families. And I met two couples and I heard how they get along better to build a future together, men and women. So they share the work that comes up in the family. They speak to each other. And I could see it in reality. I don't know if they went through Fidel's program, but nevertheless, I saw it on the street that people are working together. And women are also working in the field. Well, the negative point that is still there, women do not own the land, so they co-work. And that is where I come to my last example, that is Brazil. In Brazil, I was introduced by a host to the Movimento do Sem Terra, Movimento Sem Terra, that is the landless movement. And in a place where I had lived before, landless people, that was about 400 to 600 families, had taken over land that was not used by anybody and had started eco-agriculture together. And that's what you see here. And they named the place Marielle. Marielle is a counselor, or was a counselor in Rio de Janeiro, and she was killed by those who did not like a human rights defender like this woman. And she's got this monument, and Marielle Franco said, how many young people will have to die so that this war on the poor can end? I'm not free while any woman is unfree, even when her chains are very different from my own. And in Ireland, I was referred to this monument, which was built in 2021, and it honors all human rights defenders who, well, had to pay with their lives for what they did. They are honored here, and Marielle is among them. This monument is in Dublin, in Ireland. Well, I want to come to my last point, Servas at UN. When we met in Geneva and when we had several oral statements there at the Human Rights Council, we did not know what would happen. I do not want to go into depth, but at the moment, I'm deeply concerned about the next war, one more to the 40 that we have already around the world, and that is the war in Israel and in Gaza. Well, what you see here is Israel in orange. You see the Gaza Strip, West Bank, Golan Heights, and East Jerusalem are occupied territory, occupied by Israel since '67. And in 2013, I was at that wall that goes around Gaza. And this is the wall sometimes turns into a fence. And in the occupied territories, you have Israeli settlements, not in Gaza, but all over the West Bank. And what you also have is, can all please mute themselves? I hear some talking. Thank you. Well, what you have, I turn it back. You have Israelis settling on Palestinian ground, while on the other hand, Israeli military destroys houses, homes, and fields of the Palestinians, kind of taking over without having a peace agreement. And I saw that the military in the occupied territories is around all the time. This is a school situation. You see the soldiers on the left-hand side, and you see the children, and that is their side from morning till midday, before school starts until after school has finished. Continuously Israeli military. That is the Israeli people they see there, they meet there. When you come to Jerusalem, this is in West Jerusalem, people are always afraid. This is Yehuda Market, and there had been a terror attack. There are shelters everywhere where people can go if there are rockets coming from Gaza or from anywhere else, when there is terror going on, when violence is there. And you find a lot of soldiers who serve in the occupied to carry a gun that works around with them in their free time, whatever they do. So you see a militarized society here, or militarized everyday scene. And I stayed in 2016 with a Servas host who did not live in the apartment building on the left-hand side, but in poorer conditions on the right-hand side. And poverty is what I saw last year when I returned to Jerusalem. That's a side I hadn't seen before. So a lot is spent on what they call security, I would say military, and people are getting poorer and poorer, also in Israel. But I met this woman, Noga. She's a Servas host. I stayed with her. She has 2 little children. And at the moment, she is on the safe side. She is north of Tel Aviv, and her children do not know what is going on, fortunately, because there she doesn't hear any sirens. She doesn't, well, they don't notice. They are just playing. And she says, yes, and I want to keep it like that because I want to keep them open for meeting anyone in the world, Palestinians, Israelis. I want to keep their minds open and not concerned about danger of violence. Well, as I stayed with her in the countryside, this is what she posted on Facebook, and I connected with her and she allowed me to read it to you to give an idea of how she thinks peace can still come despite of this situation of conflict. Perhaps the only thing that can be done now is to insist on my humanism, to defend it against both internal and external forces. The horrific crimes committed today will not become less criminal, even if I remind myself that everything they did to us today, we have done to them for years. Indiscriminate shooting, including our children and the elderly, trespassing into their homes, burning their houses, taking hostages, fighters and civilians, minors and adults, everything. Not to remember this thing is to give up a piece of my own humanity, because violence, devoid of any context, leaves only one possible response: revenge. And I don't want revenge from anyone, because revenge is the opposite of security. It is the opposite of peace. It is also the opposite of justice. It's just more violence. Well, I need to tell you a little bit. There is the Parents Circle, Bereaved Families Forum, that is an Israeli-Palestinian NGO organization where mothers and fathers, Israeli and Palestinians, talk about the loss of their children through the violence from the other side. These are two members. And they, in summer, were banned by the Israeli government from going to schools and telling their stories. So they do it publicly now. Well, that is a picture before last week. And we, when we were in Geneva at the Human Rights Council, we had an oral statement to the item 7, which is about the conflict Palestine-Israel. And I read part of it to you to show you our connection with this topic. Servas International is a peace organization promoting dialogue and reconciliation through host and traveler programs. We therefore are deeply concerned by the Israeli government's ban on the Israeli-Palestinian group, the Parent Circle Families Forum, from schools. Ending violence and achieving peace requires listening to each other's narratives, promotion of exchange, no criminalization, and support of peace-committed civil society organizations. We call on all parties involved, resume peace talks and include women, unconditionally and immediately, go for a just peace for all. And believe me, after that, we were asked, what is Servas? So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Helga. I appreciate all of your thoughts. You started talking about the hard reality that people are living in poverty, and then you moved on to talk a bit about what gives you some hope and sense of resilience among the population, and in spite of that. And then I think you were very appropriate in adding the comments about the Middle East situation right now. It's certainly at the center of our minds, and your own direct perspectives from your time there, I think, are very useful for us to hear and to ponder on. So thank you very much. Your experience as a Servas world traveler. Our next speaker is Daniela Doenges. She is a Servas representative to the UN in Geneva. She's going to be speaking from the perspective of a person who's done years and years of work in humanitarian aid provision, and will be providing us with some general information on this theme of women and poverty, and particularly in the situations of armed conflict. So I'll turn things over to Daniela.
Thanks a lot, Kent. Well, let me start. Okay, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
No.
Not yet, no.
No.
Not yet. Now?
No.
Let's use this one. Okay. Now it should work, right? Now it's fine, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, good. Here we are. Okay, now thanks a lot, Kent, for the introduction, and thanks a lot for having me on this panel. It's really a great privilege, and I don't know what to say after Helga's presentation. There is not much to add, but I've tried to add my little share. So let me just tell a little bit about my person. So I've been active in Geneva since 2013. for Servas International, I was very active in human rights. I've spent 2 years in Bethlehem in Palestine between 2018 and 2020 as a country coordinator for a small German NGO. And when I came back, so there's a lot of things that we also have in common. And when I came back, and I joined a humanitarian organization, which is very different to human rights, and still both are extremely important. I'm sharing today a little bit from the humanitarian perspective at the suffering of women in conflict. Let me start with a technical, more global overview when it comes to the World Peace Index. So when we talk about peace, there's an index that talks about the global state of peace worldwide. And the Global Peace Index has decreased for 0.42% over the past years. And this is the 9th consecutive year that this index has decreased. And there have only been 2 years when this index improved a little bit since 2008. And the main driver over the past year was, of course, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, but both are now about among the top 10 least peaceful countries. But even without this conflict, the deaths related to conflicts have increased worldwide. So even if you include those. And this Global Peace Index includes also a list of the most and least peaceful countries by domain. And when it comes to safety, you see the unsafest country of the world today is Afghanistan, followed by Yemen, Syria, South Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. There are other criteria as well. When you think about ongoing conflict, this list is headed by Yemen, followed by Ukraine, Syria, Russia, and Afghanistan. And a third figure is also very important and interesting when it comes to militarization. And here we come back to what Helga just said in the end. Militarization, the most militarized country of the world is Israel, followed by Russia, followed by the US, followed by North Korea and France. And I think this says a lot, just to give you some figures. Also, there's a watch list of countries when it comes to emergency, and you see the most vulnerable countries listed here. The DR Congo is among the most vulnerable. South Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, many of them are in Africa, and now Syria and Afghanistan and Ukraine. Just to give you an idea. So when it comes to forced displacement, you see on the statistics on the right that about 11 years ago, there were about 42.7 million refugees around the world, people displaced, not only refugees, not only IDPs, but IDPs and refugees together. Today, the figure stands at, this is not on the list yet, at 117 million people. So you see the number has almost tripled over the past 10 years. And the main cause for this is war and ethnic, tribal, and religious violence. And there are most of the refugees come from very few countries. So the world's biggest refugee crisis, this is a photo taken in Syria, but not after the earthquake, but already in 2015, when the conflict began. So Syria until today is the country with the most refugees, followed by Ukraine, Afghanistan, Venezuela, South Sudan, Central African Republic, and not to forget. Can you mute yourself, please?
Lucia, could you mute yourself, please?
When it comes to the humanitarian needs, let's just still stay a little bit with the numbers. So humanitarian needs, we have currently about 220 million people across the world who are food insecure. We have over 1 million in poverty, and most of them come from Africa and South Asia. And this leads to the fact that that also has an effect on gender equality. And as it is now, gender equality is decreasing because of the humanitarian crisis and the conflicts. And now, instead of getting better, should probably take 4 generations to achieve global gender equality. So you see the effect of these conflicts and crises on humanitarian, also on gender issues. So why is that so? So when we talk about gender issues in humanitarian conflict, it's first of all that women and girls are always disproportionately affected by crises. They are the most vulnerable. They are carers. Girls are more likely to be pulled out of school, and they are much less likely to return. We also have the risk of pre-existing gender inequalities. They increase, and this leads to more discrimination, exploitation, and when a woman is in a very vulnerable situation, there is the risk of sexual exploitation. Prostitution, for example, we know after the war in Iraq that prostitution that was almost non-existent before has just dramatically increased. And this prostitution at the same time leads also to a higher risk of gender-based violence. We also have a higher risk of unwanted pregnancies, high-risk pregnancies also of girls. And what is interesting, the number is that 60%, so over the half of preventable deaths during pregnancy and birth is in conflict settings, which could be prevented. What is also interesting, that about a century, 100 years ago, 90% of all people who died during the war were just combatants, they were fighters. And today, most people who die, 90% are civilians, and 80% of these civilians are women and children. Why is that so? That's because today, the battlefield is much more inside the cities than outside the cities. And also in conflicts, rape has become a weapon of war. I just read about an example of the DR Congo today, because that's one of the countries my organization is working in. And the number of gender-based violence cases that are reported, just to say, stands now by 80,000 per year, which has also almost doubled over the past years due to the ongoing conflict in the DR Congo. So, and this, of course, particularly affects women, and they also are more than half of the people displaced. So, in many conflicts, 80% of women and children who are displaced. I don't know, you've had enough figures. I just would like to show you some pictures from our country programs where we work in, countries that are hard hit by crises. And at the same time, I will always show you just 2 photos. One of women, like here in Afghanistan, who struggle. Here is a health clinic supported by my organization, where you see the women desperately needing help. And in Afghanistan, because of the conflict, many households are led only by women. And you also see them in the fields caring for their families. Another example would be Congo, which I just mentioned. You see also the need, the health need, and especially when it comes to pregnancies, 60% of the IDPs are women, and it's the largest refugee crisis in Africa. And still you see them smile. And when we had our side event in Geneva, we had Magnus with us on the panel, who has been working with refugees in Germany. And he told us that he has always seen men and women both coming as refugees, and still men were the first to give up. And women, they were the first who really had the will to survive because they are carers for their families. Here's a photo from Bangladesh, where in the world's largest refugee camps of the Rohingya, most of the women and children suffer from malnutrition and carry the burden. And still they don't give up. We talk about Sudan, where we have 3 million people who have been forced to leave their house, so here, refugee family. 70% of the health facilities have been looted, but there are 53,000 pregnant women, and you see the women caring for each other. South Sudan. Gender-based violence in this country is among the highest in the world. And still you see the women caring. Somalia, a country affected by drought, the worst drought over the past, for 40 years almost. Now it's been raining again, but it's been extremely bad. 80% of the refugees were women and children. And you see the women caring for each other. We've been talking a lot about Ukraine. Those who were left behind in Ukraine were mainly elderly and women who did not have the means to flee. And still the women are those who care for their children. So when we come to the end of this, we must ask ourselves, are we investing in peace, or do we want to invest in war? And when we talk about humanitarian needs, the humanitarian needs overview, which is always published by the UN, stands by about a little bit more than $50 billion. $50 billion. And in June this year, only 20% of this had been funded. At the same time, military spendings this year stand at 2 trillion, which is 80 times what would be needed for humanitarian aid. We have the money to invest in war, and we don't have the money to invest in sustainable living conditions so people can stay in their homes and not be exploited. Then we don't need to talk about borders, about migration. We would help people to stay and to live in peace. So we need more women in humanitarian aid and also in peace processes. Because if women are included in peace processes, there is a 20% increase in the probability that an agreement will last more than 2 years. And a 35% increase in the probability that the agreement will last at least 15 years. And still, women so far are very marginalized in peace negotiations. So that's something we should stand up together for, include women, raise our voices, demand to be included in decision processes and peace processes, and do our little share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daniela, for your comments and your PowerPoint there. Again, a very clear illustration of the difficult reality that the world is in right now. You give the proportion of amount of money that's being spent on war as compared to more positive, peaceful activities, 80 times more on war than what's necessary, that would be necessary to create a more peaceful world. And the other message that I think came through so clearly is the resilience message, especially among women, as caregivers traditionally, and as peace builders in negotiations and post armed conflict reconstruction. So these are important messages for us to hear. So to all of you, these are two examples of individuals, Helga and Daniela, who share their experiences, who are sharing their experiences with you today. And these are the types of experiences that we pass on to the United Nations in whatever avenues we have available to do that. So our main message is that there cannot be peace without economic and social equality. We need to reduce poverty to ensure a lasting peace in the world. Women bear the brunt of the current poverty. Not only are they living in dire circumstances, but they're not realizing their full potential as in society. And this is true everywhere around the world, but especially in situations of armed conflict. So by reducing poverty, we would be able to enable all people, but especially women and girls, to be equal partners with men and boys and realize their full potential. These are the main messages that Servas International is taking to the UN these days, and we've been able to do that in at least 3 different ways so far. Starting this past July, there was something called the High Level Political Forum taking place at the UN in New York. And Servas International submitted a written statement that included these ideas in it. This was in the lead up to the summit on the Sustainable Development Goals that took place in New York in September. Secondly, and both Helga mentioned it in some detail, Servas International had a written statement at the Human Rights Council in Geneva to this effect, on the same themes, same messages, and that was earlier this month. And our third opportunity is with the UN Commission on the Status of Women. This 2-week conference will be happening this coming March. We had to get our written statement in by the end of last week, which we did. And again, it included these themes of women and poverty and conflict. And that's being circulated right now among Servas members and will continue to be circulated over the next short while. And there could be other opportunities for us to tie into United Nations events, special international days in the upcoming year on these same themes. So I'm going to move into a bit of a more open discussion, sort of a question and answer period. So we'll launch into that. I just to get things going, I did want to ask Helga and Daniela a particular question for starters. In his message today on the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, Secretary General Antonio Guterres came up with a very blunt statement saying, in our world of plenty, poverty should have no home. But then he goes on to say that over 1 billion people lack basic needs like food and water and health and care and education, and billions more lack proper sanitation and access to jobs and housing and social safety nets. So to me, this really suggests a major redistribution of wealth so that more people are sharing the wealth that does exist in the world. Do you see which ways that could happen? Do you see ways that wealth could be better distributed in the world? Helga, do you want to give that a try?
Well, I think I gave a lot of examples how people in Servas countries, but also Servas people, are trying their very best to add to this idea. I think I see more hope, and I would like to give another example from Israel-Palestine now, where we see people so deeply into violence and conflict. I met a woman at the Gaza border, and in her village, 15 people were murdered last week. And this woman is a peace activist. And she, before Gaza was blocked off in 2006, she would meet with Gaza people. They were good friends. They were good terms because it's only 400 meters away, this Gaza, from her home place. And after that, when the wall had been built, she still kept the contact, and they would inform each other about, well, there is an alarm now, the rockets are coming. Or they would say, well, the bombers are coming. So they would still keep contact. And now, after this shock, it was interesting to read from her that she chatted with people abroad and what she would say about what she does. And I think this gives me hope. This is Ronnie Kaida, by the way. She's a peace activist. And she says, many say, I'm a dreamer, but I am not. Who thinks that this conflict of two groups about the very same land can be solved with violence is a dreamer. Who believes occupation can be administrated, he is a dreamer. I, with my belief in peace, I'm a realist. And she practically would do what she would do with the people from Gaza. She would, whenever they could cross the border to go to a hospital, she would meet them and she would talk to them. So I see a lot of hope in Servas when we are traveling, when we are connecting with people, when we are taking serious what people say to us, what they tell us about their country, not only share their wonderful meals with us and taking us to tourist places that are interesting to see, but really asking them, what are the problems? What are the issues in your country? What are your personal problems? And then, well, we see that we are all humans, and that is what unites us. So that is my hope, that by meeting and where we cannot meet people, still take serious what they tell us, what their narratives are. So that is more or less my hope. It will not eradicate poverty immediately, but at least the violence that can come from it.
Thank you. Daniela, anything to add before we
Yeah,
open it up?
I'd like to add just a few thoughts. So first thing is a saying that apparently is from Gandhi, when he said the world has enough for everyone's needs, but not for everyone's greed. So it's not about that there isn't enough, it's about how we share our resources. And that's the point to start. So, and I can only start with myself. And the interesting thing, I recently had to write a text about the question, what is enough? And then I studied what is enough in a humanitarian context. What does the Sphere handbook, that's a little bit the guideline for humanitarian aid workers, say? And just to give you an example, they have the standard that 15 liters water per day are, a good criteria. But in Switzerland, people would use 140 liters per day, and already 40 liters only for flushing the toilet. Or when it comes to housing, in humanitarian context, in warm climate zones where you can go outside, they count 2.5 to 3.5 square meters per person without bath and kitchen, which is almost nothing, and 4.5 in colder climate zones. And in Europe, already a horse about 1.70 meters is supposed to have a box of about 11 square meters. Just to give you an idea, about this disbalance. And so it's about being, stop being greedy and realize that we must share in order to have a sustainable world. And I think what Helga said is the first step on the way, meet each other and care for each other.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to open up the floor to questions, comments from all participants in on this Zoom. Please do use the raise hand feature, just like Allison has already done. And that way we'll keep things orderly. Okay, I'll turn it over to Allison. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good to be with you tonight. And thank you very much to both our presenters. That was really interesting to hear. I just wanted to tell you about a small initiative we have in Servas, Britain and Ireland. And you maybe haven't heard that we are now united with Ireland as one group, although it's not so evident yet on the website. We launched a few years ago, we launched an initiative in Britain to extend our hospitality to refugees and asylum seekers within Britain at a time when our current government is in favour of creating a hostile environment to refugees and asylum seekers. And amongst our initiatives is to offer free membership for asylum seekers who want to join in a regular way, but also to pay for them to have hospitality breaks. So this week I've been organising for 4 Sudanese refugees from a local asylum centre where I live in London to take a break and stay with Servas hosts in Manchester. They were interested to go to Manchester. We are able to fund their travel and arrange a hosting experience. And I have done the same for Iraqi Kurdish refugee who's going to visit Servas hosts in Bath. And we hope to extend that kind of offer just to kind of make contact with that population of displaced people who are in our country in limbo. As an asylum seeker in Britain, you're not allowed to work for 12 months. Even after 12 months, only certain jobs you can apply for. And you are provided with some accommodation and food, but you have £9 a week spending money, which will do a few bus journeys in London in a week. It's not a lot. So anyway, in our small way, we're trying to help.
Thank you, Allison, for sharing those thoughts. And yeah, the small things that we can do locally, I think, are just so crucial because they keep them manageable. They keep us focused on doing good works, and they really do have benefits to people in their personal lives. So I commend you on that, and thank you for sharing that to us with us in that regard.
And I think both the refugee and also the host population from personal contact like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I see a few more hands going up, which is great. So let's move on to Emanuela.
Ciao, hello. I am Emanuela from Italy. I send you in the chat. I hope you can read it. A paper, it is from Israel. There is a Servas woman. She's with women from Palestine and Israel. They are together and they have written this document to ask to ONU a possibility to have peace. And they are together, and in this moment Palestinian and Israel together for the peace. It is very good hope for everybody. So I send you the document so you can read and understand better what they are doing now.
Okay.
Thank you for
sharing that. Yeah, so the document is in the chat right now, the link to it. So certainly encourage people to take a look at that, go into the chat and at least copy the link that you can look at another time very soon. So thank you. Yeah. Anything further, Emanuela, or?
I finished. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting occasion for me to understand a lot of things. Thank you very much, and bye-bye to everybody.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Rafaela.
Yes, hello, and thank you very much, because this meeting is giving me a lot of energy, and I believe that when I arrived in Servas more than 10 years ago, I was attracted by this position of Servas, and I find now what I already know. I already knew from a lot of years, but now you're giving me more energy in this. I think that we have to underline this position of Servas. And when we do an interview, for example, I am also an interviewer, and we have to underline that Servas is a part of the UN, and that we are also taking care of these aspects of life. It is not done properly, in my opinion. It is not enough what we are doing. Maybe we can do better, we can do more. Even in our meeting, when we are meeting an host, we are hosting Servas travelers, we have to underline that in our country, not everything is going well. And that not enough is done for a future of peace. We can do something more. And in this meeting, some ideas have already been on the table. And also in the document that Kent, you sent us before the meeting, I noticed that we can think on it, we can share with our members in our country, and we can have some inspiration for the future meeting. So thank you, thanks a lot, because I think that we have also to do actions, not only meeting, but also to change something in our life. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for the thoughtful comments, Rafaela. I know too that you've been quite involved in working with Servas youth and encouraging their participation. I think that is so essential that continues. We need to ensure that we renew our membership within Servas younger people and getting them engaged, I think, and pointing out to them Servas's connection to the UN is one way to really interest them and excite them as a relevant and useful way by which they can help improve the situation here in the world. A lot of youth are at the forefront of things like climate change action and things like that. And I think we need to build on that within Servas, as I see it.
Yes,
so.
You're right. We have to look at the young people because they are full of ideas and they are willing to know more and they are willing to do something more concrete. They are ready to be volunteers. They are ready to go, I don't know, to the peace school in Turkey, to do something personally, not only to speak, but also to be active in this process of building peace. And you're right. When we meet these young people, no, even elder people, but it is more important with them to be very present on these points and to speak about the UN position, Servas position in the UN, not to forget it and to repeat it when they are asking more. You have to give more.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Julie, your comments, please.
Sorry, may I jump in and use
Oh,
that chance?
sure.
Rafaela
Yeah.
is speaking about youth. We are, well, we is Faranak and me, we are trying to get as many young girls, women together to join us in the CSW 68, the Commission of the Status of Women, in March. And it is not only for participating at UN, but it's also exchanging thoughts interculturally. So please try to find young women, girls who want to join and connect with Faranak and me. Pass it on, please,
Yes.
wherever you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for raising that, Helga. The perfect opportunity to mention that. Yeah. Julie.
Thank you, Kent. Thank you, Daniela and Helga. Very, very passionate and insightful and revealing presentations, and invigorating as well. So congratulations for moving us forward, and Kent for organizing this. I'm sorry I'm not visual. I just got back late last night from a trip, and I'm probably not as picturesque as I should be. So I have a few short comments. They come from my experience as a university instructor who took, I'm now retired, who took young people to Jordan, to Kenya, Uganda, parts of Tanzania. And I see after 6 weeks or 2 months, a change in them when they learn from travel. And that doesn't just happen with younger people. It's when we get out of our comfort zone and we travel to places that we are less familiar with. In English, there's a phrase, the road less traveled. And I think that Servas has huge potential to promote the travel to countries that we are not familiar with, and to really encourage Servas members to go to parts of South America and parts of Africa and obscure places where there might only be one Servas member, because Servas has so much potential in teaching through traveling, and with that teaching comes the realization that we are all humans. We all want the same thing, and we are the same people. And so I think Servas International, through its newsletter, through its communications, through the amazing work of Francisco and May as being national peace secretaries, to really build that connection between global North countries and global South countries. And I'm not just talking about members going to travel to places that they're not familiar with. That's a very, very, very important start. But I'm also talking about Servas International providing funding for countries that don't have a lot of members or that are new to Servas, to get them to international meetings, get them to SACOGA, and get them to the UN, and especially young members, like really open up, really break down that link between global North and global South. I think that's very important. I love what I heard from Britain and Ireland. Congratulations on combining with Ireland. The idea of working with refugees, fantastic. I think every country every Servas country that has a potential to do that should do that. It's a way, again, to open up that dialogue, to open up that understanding of what, who and what we are. And then two smaller points. I think it's also very valuable for Servas to put written and oral statements and participate in UN activities. But the UN itself is struggling. There's talk in the UN about rejigging or restructuring, reorganizing. There are serious biases in UN operations, and the UN is realizing that a lot of countries don't listen to the UN. So I often wonder how far our statements and our involvement actually go. And so I think we need to continue connecting with the UN, but I also believe strongly in partnerships and in carrying these commitments forward. When you submit a statement, and I'm afraid I don't know the involvement in that, but when you submit a statement, follow through in other ways. Bring it home to your country in some way. And maybe, bringing it home to the country means maybe a little bit more of an international involvement in countries. I don't know, but I just think that there's a lot of potential there. And then the last thing I'll say is something that I've brought up with peace groups that I belong to, and that is this whole idea of the word security. I personally have a very strong problem with that word security. I think we've learned as a people, a earthbound people, that security is embedded in this idea of military. And so I try personally, and this is just me speaking from my heart, I don't like that word security. And if it's in reference to anything that is quote unquote defense, I use the term military, because I think we have to speak to the othering that happens in the world and the militarization that happens in the world. I think we have to really recognize that peace is something beyond not war. Peace has to be something positive. And I think that word security drags in the idea of militarism too much. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Julie, thank you so much for your range of comments there. I should mention Julie is one of Servas's representatives to the UN in New York. And I just want to pick up on two things that you said, Julie. One is your question about just how much impact that we can have, especially given that the UN itself at times seems to be struggling and having difficulty. We can have input into only certain parts of the UN operations. And it's where we can have input into those parts that non-government organizations like Servas have been invited by the UN to have input into. So we have this consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN, which opens up some of our doors, some doors to things like the Commission on the Status of Women. It's enabled us to participate in the Human Rights Council, and there are other potential conferences and meetings of the UN that we could engage in if we choose to in the future. But it's far from the whole scope of things that the UN involves. So our challenge is to pick and choose the the doors that are open to us and decide where we can have the most impact. The other thing I was going to say, you mentioned Francisco and May. Francisco Solomon Luna and May Wang are sharing the Servas International Peace Secretary responsibilities now. I think are doing an amazing job in doing so. The Servas reps to the UN are in close contact with Francisco and May in many ways, including the organization of this session today. So with that comment, Francisco has his hand up, so I'll turn the floor over to him.
Thank you very much. I will try to be very brief and share some ideas. First of all, I want to mention that I really thank all the Servas International representatives at the UN, Hamza, Kent, Daniela, and Angelica, of course, Helga, all the persons that collaborate in the UN team. Thank you very much. Danny from Bolivia is here also. Thank you. Thank you for your time, for your energy, because we know this is a voluntary work and we really feel very well represented at this organization. The second is that I want to mention is I really want to encourage all of you that please be present in the next local Servas member in your country and share what you learned here, and also share that you were present in this kind of meetings, because we want to spread the message. We want to all members be aware that they belong to an organization that it's really something. It's a worldwide peace organization with 75 years old. So this is really important. We have to strengthen the knowledge of Servas. The second thing that I want to mention is that, of course, there are some areas in the world that they express to me that they don't feel very well represented by the UN. And what we mention is Servas can be in several places at the time. We have to be present at the UN, but also we have to encourage the possibility to make this kind of alliances or joint ventures, let's say that way, with other local or even small organizations around the world that also have peace as a mission. We can collaborate with them. They can share the Servas peace message with them. We can let them know that they can use Servas network also to share their message. Lastly, I want to mention that I feel very glad because Latin America region has present in this meeting. We are trying to increase the participation in this area because for several years it was not very active. We are going to have a meeting in Brazil, also in Argentina and Chile. They are many of them here. Thank you, Javier. It was also Neuma. Thank you very much for your hard work, because Latin America is such a big area and there are so many places that we can increase Servas members. And I finish with also, as Helga mentioned, CSW is coming. I want to thank Kent, Paige, May, because they are doing a great work for making this event something very special. There will be so many many people will be joined virtually, and also it's free. And the main point is that also they are going to try that representative for each continent be there in person. So this is going to be a worldwide meeting from Servas in this main event at the UN. So this is something spectacular. This is something very cute. And well, just that because of the time. Thank you very much for all of you. Please share this message to the local members.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Again, you've come up with 3 or 4 excellent points in your conversations there with us. Yeah, and you talk about the importance of people on this call and other Servas members to take action locally and talk to their neighbors, talk to other local non-government organizations, work together with them. I think all of that is so important. And that can start by sharing with them the video of the recording of today's session, this valuable information that Helga and Daniela have provided, and some of the comments that have flown out of that through the participants here, I think is a great way to do it. And yes, CSW registration for, there's going to be an application process for those people attending CSW in person that Servas members will be hearing about over the next few weeks. But attending virtually is becoming more and more a common thing to UN meetings. So as you mentioned, it's free of charge. People can do it from the comfort of their own homes. They can participate in, to a great extent, just by without necessarily needing to travel to the UN location. So thanks for pointing that out too. Helga.
Thank you. I would like to mention what is discussed at the moment at the chat. There is mention that many countries have visa problems, and there is also a point of shrinking civil space, and it's also noticeable at the UN. For example, in the past, we used to have 3 minutes for speaking in an oral statement. Now it's 1.5. This is the clearest sign of shrinking civil space. But the other one is that where the UN meetings take place, people sometimes get difficulties in acquiring the visa. So this is something we need to address, not only when we are traveling, but also for our UN activities. And so maybe find a way of inviting people so that it is easier for people to get out of their countries, get into other countries, get the visa. The last point that I would like to make is, since we've all been talking about how wonderful it is that we could get into activities, there is an event in between now and CSW, and I invite you, I want to invite all of you individually. Think of organizing an event to meet on the 10th of December. It's the 75th anniversary of Human Rights Declaration. So if any of you has the initiative, the time, feel free. I really need to say thank you to Francisco and May, who really easily organized it, took over with the preparation that came from us. So make an event for all of us. Servas inside, or invite people who might want to become Servas members, invite a friend to join so that they find out what we are doing and what we want to do.
Thank you, Helga. I think we're getting close to wrapping up our session this morning. I do want to ask Daniela if you had any closing remarks from your perspective.
I think so much has been said. I have nothing to add except that it's been a great privilege to be in this panel, and yeah, I really highly appreciate the great interest also in this topic and the attendance. I'm impressed. I didn't expect so many people joining. So no, it's been a great honor, and I hope a lot will come out of this in future if we work together.
Okay, thank you. Unless somebody else has a urgent and burning comment to make, that will close things off. Anybody at all?
Hector has a hand up, I think, but not the yellow hand.
Oh, sorry, who's that?
Is that true? Hector Peralta.
Me?
Yeah?
You can listen to me?
Yeah, we
You
can
can
hear you. Yeah.
Well, I'm from Mexico, but I want to say something. I like very much the presentation, technically very good photographers, really it's surprising to see how you elect and how are you developing to take good photographies to illustrate all the presentations. But in one way, I'm sorry to say that I am really sad about to see that I participate in some in this organization, Servas, and in others more, and in New York, in the United Nations, in Geneva, and at least in many years. And in this time, I say that there are some steps forward and others back, because in sometimes something that is presented like a good initiative is not followed by some concrete realization. In this case, I'm talking that I present United Nations from Servas one paper many years ago claiming to the participation of the native population of our countries of Latin America. Because if you see, we can talk about African group, native groups, and we listen about India, some groups, so many different groups that they have, but we never listen about some groups, population that belongs to Servas, to talk about the native population. For instance, I am from Xochimilcan group, and I'm in Mexico. And we don't listen about that there are other persons from other native places, and we don't listen that from Argentina or Chile, we listen about Mapuche population. We don't listen about Brazil that have so many big population that they talk and say what is the reality of the poverty from all these populations. We can see something like this in other tremendous nice photos of Salgado, that some person that wants to see some reality can see this type of struggling photos that he shows about what is the situation in Brazil. So then I apply to say we need to make an effort in each country to participate this type of population, persons with disabilities too. No, that we don't listen. One of us, fortunately, I don't show that somebody here can say I belong to this group. So, and we need to listen because all they in general they belong to this sector of population. We say who is the sector that suffer most the poverty? All these groups, the Indian, the native populations, the disability population. So then I claim and say there are some ways that we can go to see the countries, not only the tourist way, not only to surprise about the beauty. We need to see the reality. There are nice things, but there are other tremendous things about all the society, and particularly in this time of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Hector. Yes, I think all of us can agree wholeheartedly that Indigenous people, people with disabilities, all of these groups cannot be forgotten in our efforts to move ahead towards equality and peace. Absolutely, and we can do what we can, and we always have to keep it in mind. So, two hands have gone up, and then I think we'll probably need to wrap things up for the session. So, quick comments from May in Taiwan and then Helga again.
Can we do
thank you
it
again.
other way around, because I have
okay.
a comment to Hector's request. And yes, Hector, you can even participate. In CSW at the moment, we are planning an event by Servas, and the event will be on Indigenous in the US and maybe even other countries. So if you feel like that, just help organizing this event and come in with all your suggestions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
May.
Yes, actually, I cannot see myself on the screen, so I guess my computer has some problem, but can you hear me clearly?
Oh, we can see you and hear you.
Okay, so maybe my computer is quite tired because now it's 2:30 in Taiwan.
You don't look tired yourself. So.
I thought I will miss this meeting because it's really late to me. But because I met the registration form and then I saw, wow, so many new faces from Cuba. I've never seen a Cuba member to join our meeting. And so many from Peru. It's also the first time to see the members from Peru. And I'm very excited. And so I want to see more new faces. So I'm still here. And then I notice usually a meeting, the participants will leave and will less and less. But this time I saw we still have, from the first beginning, we have about 30. And until now, we still have 24. It's a very good because the meeting is so attractive and the presentation is so productive, I feel. So very good for Servas. But I think we need more members from Asia. There's only 2 from Asia and both of us are from Taiwan. And so if you know some members from Asia, please also encourage them to join the international meeting. So we will become stronger and stronger. Thank you.
There are 3 of us. India is also represented.
Yes, India. No, sorry, India.
And Iran.
Yeah. Iran also is there, exactly. So 4 of us are there.
So, so thank you, May. And of course, May shares the Servas International Peace Secretary role with Francisco, and May was very instrumental in putting together the Zoom meeting and getting it publicized for today. So many thanks to you, May, for doing that. Okay, again, unless somebody has something they just have to get off their mind, let's call it a session being completed. It's been a very, very useful discussion, I think, in so many ways, and I look forward to reviewing the recording when it's prepared and sent out, and encourage you again to share it with your neighbors, your other Servas friends that you know, but beyond that, to potential Servas members in that regard. Okay, let's say goodbye, and thank you again for your time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for your time, Ken. See you.
Bye.